This is going to be my lynching overview video. Okay, some of you know what lynching is, some of you don't. Some of you kind of heard of it, but you don't really know the ins and outs and how it operated and what people thought. I'm gonna go over that and just give you some really general overview of what happened during this period in American history. This is American history, not all that Declaration of Independence stuff. This is real American history. So let's get right into it. So, lynchings happened between about 1870 through, some people go into the late 60s. Some people stop at the 30s. We're going to stay up until just pre-civil rights movement. That is when it really ended, because it no longer was socially acceptable, because people were really like, okay, if we get caught, if somebody points a finger, then we're actually going to go to jail. But before, it was like people kind of knew who had lynched somebody, but nobody was prosecuting. So when the heat of the government starts really weigh down on people, that's when it really stopped. But if the government had continued to kind of turn its head, I'm not going to say it would be going on still today, but it would have kept going on till another point in time. So who and where were people being lynched? People were lynched all over this country. It was not just a South thing. They were lynching people out South, like cowboys. If you had stolen somebody's cattle, that's a huge thing back then. Like, you stole somebody's cattle or horses, they would lynch you for that. It was a huge deal. They lynched people in the Midwest. Indiana has one of the most famous lynchings. There was also a really big spectacle lynching in Southern Illinois. So it was all over the South, well into the West, and there were a few up north. I know there was one in New York. So yeah. And it was not just black people. It was also white people. It was also Latino people were also lynched. So it was not strictly a black thing, but the majority of people who were lynched were black. Let's see. So there were about 5. The number varies between 4 to 5, but it's a little bit closer to 5,000 people between 1870 and so maybe 1930, 60, sort of in there. But as the years toward the end of that period, the numbers started to dwindle. When it used to be like 10, 15 people a year, then it was like 1 or 2 or more than that. What else? So what would provoke a person to be lynched? What most people will tell you is that it was the accusation of rape of a white woman, rape of a white girl, and sometimes that was the case, but in other instances it was other things. It was more so at this time, black people were starting to assert themselves. They were business owners, and they just kind of had pride in their blackness, and this threatened white people in the South. They couldn't stand that. They really were still holding on to that Confederate mentality. When a black person walked past you, you were supposed to put your head down, and when people went, that would just offend them and it would upset them. So if there was this was actually the case, I think it was in Tennessee, a black business owner who owned a grocery store, and his white competitor, he got pissed. He ended up killing that man. He actually ended up killing two black men. Ida Wells wrote a fabulous expose on this. So it was those sorts of crimes. Sometimes it would be murder, sometimes it would be rape, but it was a lot of times you will see, if you go through statistics, and I'll post a couple of links below, it will be crimes unknown. Yeah, it would really be by crimes unknown, because who knew? What else? But it was not always rape. So I want a lot of the pro-black men to know that it wasn't always rape. Second, so who are the people being lynched? Now, most people think it's like the redneck, the hoodiest, just the low lives of this town. Not at all. Sometimes it would be, sharecroppers and people who are of a lower class, but it was a lot of times be local politicians. It would be doctors, businessmen, bankers. It was vigilante violence, which means that people back then didn't wait for the law to come in. If somebody accused a black man of doing something, or someone of doing something, and just the police just didn't get to it in time, a group of vigilante, usually men, would come and they would just go get you. They would go get you. So this would be done in 2 ways. They would break into the jail. So let's say the police had arrested someone, the person sitting in jail waiting for the next morning for them to go before the court to say blah blah blah, I'm guilty, not guilty. Well, the vigilante will break into the jail about 2-3 o'clock in the morning. They say get him. Now there's usually empty jail, one jailer, and he's sitting there, and there's 50 men at the door, and they're like, you can either give him to us or you can die, but either way we coming to get him. So sometimes the jail would be like, no, I can't do that. And sometimes they're like, F that, take him. And they would catch him, they would get this man, get this woman, it happened to women as well, and they would hang him. Or they would just go to your house. They wouldn't wait for the police, they wouldn't wait for the law, as we said, and they would bang on the door, house full of people. They said, you send him out, or we're coming in and we're getting everybody. So, and let's say in that instance, and the person did not surrender to the vigilante, it would be, they would go in and they would probably kill all the men inside, and they would usually rape the women inside. Okay? And if they didn't kill them, it was because they shocked the women so much that they refused to testify against, they refused to point a finger. Because, you know, if someone breaks into your house and they're threatening to kill your husband, if you look at them, you will notice that that's the butcher. And these men were scared. They were like, oh shit, they may say something. Like, yeah. So usually they ended up just killing anybody that was around that could possibly point the finger. So there's two types of lynching. There are spectacle lynchings, and there are public and private lynchings. A private lynching is usually it's a smaller group of vigilantes, a smaller group of men, and they come and get the person, and they'll hang them in, near the area, near the person's home, in a space of wood close to the house. Or if the crime, let's say you lived in Brown County and the crime was supposedly committed in Cullerton County, 3 counties over, they would take that person to that county and lynch them there. What else? Okay, what is lynching exactly? Lynching is typically seen as the hanging of a person, but we'll get into it's somewhat a little bit more gruesome and graphic than that. A public lynching is when they take the person, they'll usually wait till overnight, or sometimes they'll do it in the evening, and they'll take the person before the entire town, or in an open wide space. They'll do this on weekends sometimes. They will just put this person before the entire town. And when I say the entire town, I mean men, women, and children. These were seen as like an event, okay? People would call off work. They would let their kids out of school. It was a huge deal, okay? People, and this is where the phrase picnic came up. Because to pick a Negro, to hang them up, and to watch this person die. Okay? Spectacle lynchings, it was a huge deal. Like, hundreds of people would come out to watch someone die. And usually this person had been tortured. They usually hung them naked. If they didn't hang them naked, they would wrap something around them as modesty, like, okay, whatever. Sometimes they would set the person on fire prior to them being dead. Sometimes the person would still be living and they would still set them on fire. What else? Souvenirs. So the person is dead, right? So people need souvenirs. They would cut the person's fingers, toes, and ears off and pass them and sell them as souvenirs. I kid you not. I swear. I wish I was lying to you. Second sort of souvenir are what we now know as lynching photographs. And they're all over the internet, and you can find them. People sell them on eBay. Lynching photographs. So a photographer will come in, the local photographer, as a photographer in the area, and they will pose the body. They will sit him up. They will sit her up. Well, there's only one female lynching photograph. They will sit this person up, and they would take a photo. The person happens to be naked. They would wrap a towel around them, or a sheet, or whatever, but they would photograph this dead person, and they would sell the photographs. You can look in old Southern homes and old attics and like old family albums. You will find lynching photographs. What would they do with lynching photographs? They would distribute them. People would sell them, and they would also become postcards. Postcards were used for two things: to send your brother in Kentucky a postcard, And also, postal workers were typically black people. So not only were they terrorizing people in their local town, but you're sorting the mail just at work and you come across a lynching photograph. They're terrorizing black people all over the country. And this went through the National Postal Service. So this wasn't something, eventually they stopped allowing lynching postcards to come through. But this went on for quite a while. So I've run out of time, and there will be a part 2 to this. It's really gruesome. This is American history, y'all.